Dr. Celine Gounder is a CBS News medical contributor and editor-at-large for public health at KFF. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you for joining us. So how does a seemingly healthy 18-year-old go into cardiac arrest?
Well, there are a couple different scenarios that could have played out here. One is what we call hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is basically a thickening of the heart muscle. We see this often in elite athletes, as well as sometimes with certain genetic predispositions. Second scenario is what happened to Damar Hamlin, what we call commotio cordis, where somebody sustains a hit to the chest. It's timed perfectly during the cardiac rhythm that it sends you into cardiac arrest. And the third possibility is a genetic arrhythmia, so abnormal heart rhythm.
First, we give well wishes, thoughts, energy, and prayer to Bronny James and his entire family. No one wants to see a young one or a loved one in that type of condition, so our heart goes out to them considering this situation. That's the first thing. The second thing is what she makes mention of are three causes to cardiac arrest. One being a arrhythmatic heartbeat or an abnormal heartbeat. Second one is a thickening of the heart or the heart muscles or the arteries surrounding the heart. And the third one, which she made mention was the actual hitting of the heart at the time of the rhythmic heartbeat, which causes the person to go into cardiac arrest. Let's continue with the video.
For some reason, I feel like it does happen more often than we actually think. So could you answer that for me?
Yeah, it happens more often than we actually realize, and it really hits the headlines when it's somebody famous, like Damar Hamlin, like Bronny James. But this is certainly something that happens. And I think a key question also, this has been studied by researchers at the University of Washington. They've looked at all NCAA athletes, how often you see sudden cardiac arrest. And the group that is at highest risk are black male college basketball players. And why black men? Why basketball? That we don't have a good answer to, and that really needs to be studied more closely.
I sound like the man on the panel. Why black male college basketball players? Why black male college athletes? You have the understanding that cardiac arrest is affecting them, but then on the other hand, you lack the knowledge to understand as to why that is. Or we know it's affecting them, but we don't know why it is. I had the same response as the man on the panel. Really? And I see they had no pushback on that comment, though. They let it ride on out. We have pushback on this panel over here on this side of the channel. Let's continue real quick before we push back on them.
Johnson in college basketball, Jared Butler, a couple others where we've seen something similar with them. It's great news that he is out of intensive care right now. As far as regular health and then also basketball future, what are doctors going to look for now?
Admittedly so, that is great news. Great news that Bronny James, he is in a stable condition after the cardiac arrest. For those who do not know, this young man was practicing, I think, at USC or one of the at USC, and during the practice, he suffered a heart attack at the age that he is in. Not to mention his father is one of the most well-conditioned athletes of all time. I continuously say LeBron James is not, in my opinion, the greatest basketball player of all time, but he's the greatest basketball player of all time for the longest time, speaking of his longevity and his ability to take care of his physical body. And then so we see the irony of this, where his son has suffered this type of cardiac arrest. But as we know, this type of things are on the rise, particularly after the post-pandemic. The post-pandemic situations which causing the cardiac arrest are situations such as sedimentary lifestyles, people eating bad foods, eating more and more comfort foods in the midst of their trauma. The stress has caught up to them. The inflation has caught up to them. The frustration has caught up to them. So all this surrounds one's physical health and also the heart to a great degree. This is not LeBron James or Bronny James case, but this is the reason as to why the cardiac arrest or heart issues have been on the rise in America since the post-pandemic time period. Cardiac arrest is the number one cause of death in America before the pandemic, and now we see an uptick in it after the pandemic. So what's going on here? And then what also has to be examined is why are black male college basketball players, why are black college basketball players, male basketball players, they didn't even say female, they said male, why are they being susceptible to cardiac arrest more so than anyone else?
Is out of intensive care right now. As far as regular health and then also basketball future, what are doctors going to look for now in the coming days with Bronny?
Well, in general, and I can't speak specifically to Bronny's case, these kinds of elite athletes will have some sort of cardiac screening. So that would include, at baseline, so an EKG, an echocardiogram. So he probably had those, which means he probably does not have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That would have been picked up on an echocardiogram. So setting that aside, could he have had commotio cordis like Damar Hamlin? We don't know that he sustained a hit to the chest. So that leaves a genetic arrhythmia. So the next step in the workup would be an MRI of the heart to look more closely at the heart muscle, putting him on a monitor to see if he has arrhythmias again, and perhaps some genetic testing. So all of that, you're talking about probably a couple months at least of testing, follow-up, trying to assess, does he have a recurrence before easing back into training and play.
She says in general, not knowing Bronny James' case, that they're going to go right back to the same old testing of the pre-pandemic time period. They're going to look for an arrhythmic heart. They're going to look for a thickening the heart muscles. They're going to do the EKG. They're going to take a look at all those things because she can almost guarantee you that the reason why he had this cardiac arrest is for one of those three reasons. See the logic behind this? You have to understand this. You have to understand the flawed thinking in their logic in the medical world. If it doesn't fit my mold, if it doesn't fit my understanding, then it's not there. They say they got to go back for a few months of testing on those three things. Oh, we must have missed something. We must have missed the abnormal heartbeat. We may have missed the thickening of the heart walls or the heart muscle. Or possibly he was hit at the practice simultaneously as his heart was beating. Someone hit him at that point of his chest, caused him to go into cardiac arrest. How often does that happen in basketball, family? How often does it even happen in football, family? They want to say that happened to Damar Hamlin. Did that actually happen? Did that really happen? What are the chances of you being hit in your chest at the same time where your heart has reached its peak of the rhythm? The peak of the beat is the time that you got hit in your chest. How often could that possibly? How does that happen? And the thing is this, if you can't explain it with one of those three things, these pre-pandemic ways, you're going to have to start looking at other options or other reasons as to why these things are happening. I look at my own case, for example, playing basketball in a college. They were working me like a slave. High school and college, as a student athlete, is arguably the hardest job I ever had in my life. I run businesses now. I can do these businesses kind of in my sleep because of the training which I've had in college basketball as a student athlete, as a professional basketball player. This is why I'm kind of disappointed in Michael Jordan to some degree. I don't know all the details, but I would prefer him to stay in ownership if he had the opportunity to do so. But that's another conversation for another day. But one thing that Mike does do well is he does transmute. He did transmute from basketball player to ownership. So we respect that for the time which he did that. Nonetheless, point being back here is this. The student athlete is working like the high school athlete, student athlete. They might have like 10, 12-hour days. I mean, I'm up from 6 o'clock in the morning until about 10 o'clock at night. And my days are filled with school, weight training, running, basketball practice, the whole 9 yards. It takes a great toll on your body as a young person. I lie to you not. It's almost like a slave to some degree. Your thoughts are not your thoughts. Your movements are not your. You are a robot. Okay, and you're owned by that institution to some degree. And you represent that school to a great degree, and you carry a great deal of responsibility. So there's a lot of stress on these athletes. I'm explaining to you why the black male athlete suffers cardiac arrest more than anyone else. And they come to find out in my situation, it was not even a heart issue. It was a nutrition issue, back to the point of this channel, because proper nutrition can solve many of these ailments, many of these issues. We're not talking about Bronny right now, because in Bronny's case, that may have been something completely different. As we play the video, we'll explain what we're talking about here for 1 second. But we're talking about the black male athlete, particularly the basketball player,
Dr. Gowder, this happens in
and why he is susceptible to cardiac arrest. Because being an elite athlete, and they are then putting junk food in their bodies before the games and after the games. And this becomes a cycle of repeat and repeat, and it eventually will catch up to the person. We're not saying this happened to Bronny James. We're explaining to you about the black male athlete. And because basketball is such a stop and go sport, stop and go sport, stop and go sport, it puts a lot of pressure on that heart. And then so it's just like driving a luxury vehicle. Just like driving a luxury vehicle, that the athlete is like a luxury vehicle. If you put bad gas into that luxury vehicle, guess what's going to happen? The vehicle is going to have an engine attack. It's going to be all choppy, and the ride will not be as smooth until that bad, cheap gas has been used up and consumed. And if you repeat the cycle, and put more bad gas into it, then guess what's going to
a
happen?
context.
It's going to continuously be destroying the engine and the inner parts of the vehicle. Likewise with bad food and high octane athletes. Athletes who are always on the go, always on training, mentally and physically, always training. They are the ones, hear me now. They are the ones who are in need of the nutrients more than anyone else. See that? The average person who's not pushing their body, pushing their mind to the most high degree, that high limit, they can get away with eating some of this bad food, some of this junk food, some of this trash food. But the person who is pushing themselves to the fullest, you are the ones who are susceptible to the cardiac arrest the most, because you're feeding your body that garbage food when you need the most nutrients. Think about that one. Gotta think about that one. So they put me through a bunch of heart tests when I was playing basketball in college. They put me through a bunch of tests to make sure that my heart was okay. They checked for my arrhythmic heart, same thing what she's saying right here. They checked for the thickening of hearts, my heart wall, the arteries. They checked for the EKG. They put me through an EKG. They put me through a tilt test. All these tests. Come back, find out nothing's wrong. But I know what was wrong. I found out what was wrong. This is why I encourage you to not be your own doctor, but to consult with your own body. I didn't say be your own doctor. I said to consult with your own body. Listen to it. I had to learn this as a young person. I found out what was wrong with me. And what was wrong with me is the same thing I'm preaching today on this channel. It was a lack of nutrition. It was a lack of hydration. And then when you compound that with the workload that I was taking on, 10, 12, 13, 14-hour work days. Yeah, you're a young man. Yeah, you're durable. Yeah, you can do it. But you have to replenish the body with the good foods and the water and the juices. And when you're not doing that in college or in high school because you don't know any better and your coaches don't know any better, they have just as bad diet as you do, bad appetites and bad diets and bad food choices as you do. Eating McDonald's before the game, eating McDonald's after the game. You couldn't do that in my presence. I would have to smack it out your hand. I would tell you, I'm not going to sit back and let you kill yourself. See this? Chick-fil-A, Burger King, McDonald's, and Taco Bell. This is the diet of many of these black male college athletes. I was one. I know. Denny's at night. Taco Bell at night. Chinese food during the day. I know this. So you're running the body full force, full load. And look what you are replenishing the body with. This is one of the problems. This is one of the problems with this cardiac arrest issue with the black male athlete, because the job that they're taking on is truly one of the most stressful and strenuous jobs you can find. You literally have the school and the city on your back, literally. And you're going to need the nutrients and the strength to carry it. See how that goes? So what was my problem? My problem was very simple. Like I said, dehydration, exhaustion, lack of nutrition, and dehydration. And then, of course, your heart going to be all fluttered, and your blood levels going to be all keyed off because you're not taking the right foods and you're working yourself like a slave. That's what it's coming down to. So what do? We continue to work diligently as we could, but we had to begin to put the right foods in our system before practice and after practice. The right proteins, the right meats, the right everything has to go inside the system. You become a machine that way. So now you become a finely ran luxury vehicle, and it runs very silent. You can't hear it because it has the right fluids in it, it has the right juices in it, it has the right nutrients in that vehicle. Let's continue.
Play.
Dr. Gounder, this happens in a context. We've had a big debate about COVID-19 and the result, what happens when you have vaccines. And anytime somebody famous has a heart event, as you know, it gets sorted into this, it's a reaction to the vaccine. What's your response to that kind of thinking?
So I want to be very clear. This has nothing to do with COVID-19 vaccines. Over 80% of the American population has now had a COVID vaccination, if not more than one.
That's why I get very leery. That's why I get very watchful. Very watchful. What did she say? Let's replay.
Thinking.
So I want to be very clear. This has nothing to do with COVID-19 vaccines. Over 80% of the American population has now had a COVID vaccination, if not more than one. That would be like saying, I need my tooth pulled out next week. That must be because I had COVID vaccination.
Wait a minute. Hold on, doctor. Slow down there, doctor. Slow down for the bar. Slow down. Slow down. Because, doctor, we do know for a fact that during this post-pandemic time period, that there is a rise in cardiac arrest and heart disease and heart failure and heart complications. We know this. We know that myocarditis is on the rise in America. And we do know that many people did take this JAB. We know that many people took this JAB. And so let me just be clear. So you say you want to be clear. No, let me be clear. We would have to be almost delusional to a point. We would have to be almost completely insane or disillusioned to the point of completely just ignoring the context and the things that which are before us. We would almost have to be out of our mind to not at least entertain the ideal or the notion that the JAB is causing at least some of this uptick in cardiac arrest, heart failure, heart disease, myocarditis, stroke, and such like. And if we don't at least entertain that, and then if we just exclude the JAB as to being a potential factor, a potential cause, a potential culprit to some degree in this pot, then we are completely being professionally dishonest. And we would have to say that. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And that's my point. As I said before here on this channel, you got doctors who are not really trying to heal you nor kill you, but they are trying to treat you because there's profit in treatment. Now, let's move on. I think we're going to be done with that. Our well wishes to the Bronny James family, and we're very happy that he is stable after cardiac arrest, and we hope to see him back on the court very, very soon. Ball out, young man, ball out, and get the juice in you, get the good foods in you. All right? Get God's foods in you. Now that brings us to our next point. Let's just finish up on this video real fast.
These are unrelated events, but this is straight out of the anti-vax playbook to say, well, just asking questions, maybe, how do you know? And I think what's the intent here is to sow confusion, to make people wonder, and it's having that impact.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Gounder, thank you so much for being here, as always.
And on that note, we'll let the doctor have the last word. Moving on.